Look, I've spent a decade working in tax, fighting the IRS, and fixing tax disasters, okay? This is my no BS advice from over 10 years in practice. I'm Jasmine DiLucci. I'm a tax attorney, CPA, and enrolled agent. I got my first tax license in high school, okay? My day-to-day is running my CPA firm and tax law firm, but I started posting online when I realized, holy shit, what most people that are experienced tax professionals call stupid, pointless, or tax fraud is what marketers call tax advice on the internet. So we're going raw on this one, just how I actually feel about this stuff. First, the less you know, the more you owe. Okay, the biggest IRS messes that I have seen are not from DIY returns. They're from people who do not understand the basics, okay? You need to know enough to know when something isn't right. If you talk to business owners who are further ahead of you and not dealing with IRS issues, there's a pattern. They don't say, I have no clue what's going on, or my financials and tax return aren't important. What they do say is, I know enough to be dangerous, or I keep a pulse on my financials. You don't need to become a tax expert, okay? But you need to understand your business and finances well enough to have a productive discussion with your accountant so you can ask the right questions, spot gaps, and give them the full picture, because here's the reality. Tax is often your single largest expense, and in my experience, the less you know, the more you owe. All right, number 2. Cousin Bob may know how to cook a mean steak, but he doesn't know how to explain whether you're subject to passive loss limitations. Okay, look, I'm sure you don't do this. This is for the other people that do this, okay? And what those other people do is sometimes they listen to Cousin Bob, which is meant to represent all those people out there who have no tax background, but have a lot to say about taxes, okay? Sometimes it's your family member, sometimes it's your realtor or your barber, and sometimes it's just someone on TikTok with a ring light and a dream, and they take Cousin Bob real seriously. But here's the thing, tax law is hard, okay? People who know the least are the most confident because they are that unaware of how little they know, okay? Cousin Bob usually doesn't even understand his own tax situation, let alone yours. And I'll never tell you not to hear people out, but you should question their advice enough to actually understand it and then verify it yourself. And if Cousin Bob can't even give you enough detail to look up the thing that he is talking about, then let him focus on cooking the perfect ribeye, not cooking the books. Number 3, cut the FOMO. Okay, people are going to make you feel stupid for paying tax. They're going to say, rich people don't pay tax. Rich people have secrets they don't share with you. That is bullshit. Okay, we have the internet. And when there's a legal way to save tax, there are people out there willing to sell that strategy to you. I promise. Okay, the real problem is if you get focused on FOMO, then that's when you pay for things you don't need. That's how a realtor sells you a house 2 times the size of your budget, or an insurance salesman sells you 8 different kinds of insurance for a risk you don't yet have. So the first thing you should do is relax. Okay, I believe you should understand the lay of the land before irrationally buying something you do not understand. And that is a shameless plug for my free community. Okay, I bust my ass answering questions. I put a ton of free information out there about transcripts. I do monthly free workshops, and if you're petrified you've missed the boat, start with understanding the basics to see if you really are missing out. Because here's the real secret. Rich people got rich by focusing 99% of their energy on growing their skill set and their business, and then they focus on reducing tax. They do not stress over tax before they have a real profit. 4, people who do not understand tax research cannot identify the difference between gray areas in tax law and gaps in their knowledge. It is so tempting to call something a gray area. And you know who does that the most? People who don't know a damn thing. Okay, it is like asking your doctor which procedure has the highest success rate and hearing, it's a gray area. You wouldn't accept that. You'd tell them to check the data and see what's happened for others who've gone through the same procedures. And while we all expect medical research to exist, for some reason in tax law, people act like there aren't thousands and thousands and thousands of court cases and tons of extensive tax guidance to research. Here's a crazy idea. Before we make a blind and uneducated decision, maybe let's look at what's already happened to other taxpayers who've taken the same position. That's what tax research is, and it's only after that process that you can see if something is a gray area. Number 5, the IRS, making simple things complex and making complex things terrifying. Okay, working with the IRS is not like dealing with a for-profit private party. It is the government, okay? So if you expect logic, efficiency, or quick resolution, good luck. The IRS is the undisputed champion of turning a simple submission into a year-long process, some lost mail, and a tax due notice. Okay, they can take what is a very clear, easy situation and do absolutely nothing with it since they just fired all of their staff and have excessively mediocre technology. And that's why I would make sure you find someone who is used to working with them and they're not common sense procedures if you end up needing them. So if you want to know how I really feel, that is it. And if my content is at all helpful to you, let me know by subscribing so that we can keep helping more people with actual tax law from a tax attorney.